Hey everyone, I'm Jaxby. So buying yourself a PC case is important. Like, let's face it, it's what you're going to be looking at every time you see your computer. It is the focal point. So let's have a look at things to, look out for certain aspects of buying cases. So the first thing I want to talk about is the obvious thing. Firstly, looks do matter, okay? It is your money. As I said at the beginning, it's what you're going to be looking at every time you turn on your computer, turn off your computer, if you have RGB lights and whatnot. Like, the case is the focal point of the computer, so everything is stored and it's what you look at. So looks do matter. Let's face it, buy something that you like the look of, okay? You can get something that performs well and that looks good. I wouldn't just stick with things that perform perfectly well if you don't like the look of it. But while looks do matter, there are things, like I said, that you need to look out for. So things that you need to look out for is one, storage slots. Like, how many hard drives are you going to have? How many 2.5-inch SSDs are you going to have? Okay, if you're going to be using 3.5-inch drives and 2.5-inch drives, that's something that you got to keep in mind of. If you're just going to be using NVMe, then it's not as much of an issue. But I maintain that for expandability in storage, something to keep an eye out for. Like, well, this case has 4 2.5-inch drive slots. Does that do it for me? Another thing is USB. Most modern day cases have a USB Type-C port at the front. You find most have also, obviously, a power button and a reset button, headphone and microphone jacks, whether they're combined or not's a different story. But also, back to USBs, which I should have stayed with, let's face it. Some cases will come with one Type A 3.0 port. Some cases will have two. Some cases might have an extra 2 USB ports that run USB 2.0. My case, I've got a Linear 11 Dynamic XL, has one USB Type-C port and 4 USB A ports that run 3.0 spec. But because my motherboard only supports up to 2 front panel USB 3.0 ports, I've had to run 2 of those 3.0 ports on the case to adapter for 2.0 speeds. So there's something to look out for. I'm not hating on my case, I actually do love it, and I'm fine with that choice as well. Features. Cases do have features. It's an amazing concept. You wouldn't think that basically a metal box would have features. But obviously, like the USB ports, they're a feature. Let's face it, you expect it, but what you get is where a feature can come in. Again, my case is 4 USB 3.0 ports. I can't use them all at 3.0 speeds, but that's a feature that not many cases have. But with that, feature-wise, my case is very much an Aquarium setup. It has side intake, but also it's dual chamber, meaning that the power supply is where all the cable management is. Also, a feature for my case is that it's got hot swappable 3.5-inch bays. So features do matter. Some cases have hinged doors, which they are awesome. I will admit, they are awesome. But if it's something that you don't need, then it's something that you don't need. Of course, if it's something that you really like the look of, go for it. Because, well, it's your money, let's face it. But if we have a look at my partner's case, her features are basically that, it came with fans. It came with 2 ARGB 200mm fans at the front and one blacked out fan at the back. That was 120mm. So those were the main features that the case came with, outside of like USB ports, radiator, space and whatnot. Form factor is very important because you might see a case that you really like the look of, but you really got to consider how big the case is. Like, will it fit the other parts that you want? Because let's face it, an astronomical exaggeration, but most mini ITX cases, you got no hope in fitting a board bigger than a mini ITX or mini DTX. So putting it simple, but form factor can affect what parts you get, not just for motherboard, but also for power supply, also for cooler. Like, going on with form factor is important. It's also clearances, like how big the case is itself. My partner's case is a mid-sized tower, And my initial goal was to put in a 280mm radiator for her cooling, because I was swapping coolers myself. So instead of buying a new cooler, I was just going to use my original cooler, which was a 280mm cooler. But that wasn't going to fit with the RAM choice that we had already picked out. So I sold my old cooler. So yeah, do make sure that the case is going to be big enough for what you want. But if you're dead set on that case, you might need to make adjustments elsewhere with your part selection. By the way, I'm going with the features of that my partner's computer, that my missus' computer had fans. Mine didn't come with fans. I want to talk about fans later on in this video. Now, the next three points I want to make, I'm going to go through them basically one at a time, but I'm going to try and keep them all very relevant to each other. Before I start these 3 points, I want to reiterate the point that if you're dead set on a case, get it. It's your choice. It's your money. Okay. If you like the look of a case, go for it. Just do it. Okay. The first thing is price to performance. I spent $400 Australian. Technically, my partner's case, we won, but I'll put its dollar value up here because honestly, I can't remember it. I think it may have been a $100 to $150 Australian case. I wouldn't say that her computer case performs any worse than mine for CPU. Maybe for GPU it would, but all in all, price to performance, her case is of better value and doesn't look bad. My first case was a $200 to $250 case as well. My first case was the Cougar Panzer Evo, which actually is a really nice segue into my next point of mesh front panels versus glass front panels. So obviously if you have a mesh front panel, it allows for better breathability. Basically your fans can pull air through mesh. It's not a solid pane of glass. Fans can't pull air through a solid pane of glass. It needs to be either side vents in the front panel, or a decent amount of space between the glass and the metal of the front panel for air to come through, for fans to breathe. So there is a performance hit if you have a glass front panel. My partner's case has a mesh front panel. Technically my front panel is glass, but because my intake is on the side, being a Lead Dynamic XL, the intake is actually a mesh panel. So I do get the advantages of having a mesh panel. My first case though was a complete glass panel, and the stock configuration for the fans was choking the fans. It wasn't killing the system. The computer was actually cooling very nicely, but because it was hampered in where it could pull air in. I think I've said this previously in my video about computer fans, so have it up in the top right as a card. But I had to move the fans back to a 25mm, so basically the fan space plus the bracket, so maybe like 26-27mm. And doing that drops my cooling by, quite honestly, 10 degrees because, well, the case could breathe better. My parts could breathe better and it was better airflow. So if you're going to pick a case that has glass panels for your intake, again, your money, get what you want, but do consider that it can affect the longevity of your components. And since that we've been talking about fans, let's move over to the last point. Fans or no fans? My partner's case came with fans. My current case didn't come with fans, but my first case did. When a computer case comes with fans, it's a funny story because you are paying for those fans, but are you going to use those fans? That's where I think things need to be put into perspective. If there's an option for the case that you like with no fans in it, and it's all the same features, and you are probably going to... So let's put it this way. If you like the case and you like the fans that the case comes with, get them. But if you don't like the fans and there's an option to get the case with all the same features, minus the fans at a cheaper price, honestly, that's what I would be doing. Because then you get yourself new fans that you actually want to have in your system. But again, at the end of the day, it's your money, it's your choice, and it's what you want to look at every day. Okay? So get what you want, just keep in mind on those things, especially the glass front panel thing, because that does firstly affect performance, but also it affects it can affect longevity of like your CPU and your GPU. And your fans, because if your CPU gets hot and everything's tied to your CPU temperatures for like your fan control for speeds, your fans could be working harder than what they need to as well. But hey, don't forget to hit that subscribe button down below as well as that like button. It really helps me out. If you want me to talk about certain bits and bobs about computers or other bits of technology, do let me know and I'll have a look into it. Like, let's be fair, I'll most likely do it anyway. But anyway, I want to thank you all for watching this video. Have a good day, have a good week. See you next time. Bye.